Pray silence for the Right Honourable the Lord Mayor.
Your Excellencies, my Lords, Secretary of State, Ministers, fellow Aldermen, Mr. Recorder, Sheriffs, Chief Commoner, ladies and gentlemen, it is our great pleasure to welcome you to Mansion House for the Easter Banquet. Thank you especially to the Foreign Secretary and the Dean of the Diplomatic Corps for joining us this evening. As you know, I am the 695th Lord Mayor of the City of London, a place I like to refer to as the world's oldest democratic workers' and residents' cooperative, nearly 14 centuries old. Now, the flag, or standard, which you can see here in the four corners of the building, the flag or standard of the City of London is the St. George's Cross, allegedly adopted from our friends in Genoa in 1190, though we no longer pay them for the privilege. I am pleased, though, to be the first Italian Lord Mayor, first US-born Lord Mayor, and third Irish Lord Mayor, with 4 passports, a German Lady Mayoress, a French son, Japanese grandchildren, and a daughter who's starting to turn Dutch. And my background is a reflection of our city's cosmopolitan connections here tonight. We are also extraordinarily pleased to welcome my predecessor and fellow Irishman, Nicholas Lyons, and his wife Felicity, back to the city this evening after a 6-month period of purdah. Welcome back. If an Irish goodbye refers to someone quietly ducking quickly out of a party without bidding farewell, then tonight we have the inverse, a very loud and proud Irish hello. Now, I happen to have a bit of a reputation for telling dad jokes. Did you know the Swiss embassy had its flag stolen last week? I heard they were nonplussed. Do you know what I hate? Double standards. I mean, one flag is enough, surely? Ladies and gentlemen, I am delighted to celebrate the invaluable work diplomats do on the anniversary of 2 key dates. On this day, the 9th of May, 1386, Portugal and England ratified the Treaty of Windsor, which strengthened their commercial ties and guaranteed the mutual security of both our nations. Enduring to this day, 638 years later, it holds the record for the longest-lasting diplomatic treaty. And the 9th of May is also Europe Day, which marks the anniversary of the historic Schuman Declaration of 1950, which set out a vision for a new form of political cooperation in Europe. Diplomats hold themselves to high standards, and that's my theme for this evening. Standards. Not a sexy topic, right? Wrong. Take electrical mating. When you hear that satisfying click of a male and female connector coming together, you know standards are at work. USBs charge, communications flow. Now, you might wonder why we're talking about standards, but a world ordered for decades by globalization and geoeconomics has quickly become a world grounded in geopolitical risk. Today, during a mega election year, the Israel-Hamas conflict sadly grinds on. Tensions between Iran and Israel remain high. The Russo-Ukrainian war has entered its 805th day. Recent African conflicts have displaced more than 40 million people, and cyber attacks have become more frequent and more severe than ever. But we want to see a world where cities thrive, a world that is open to trade and commerce. Because as you all know, trade reaps economic benefits from specialization and comparative advantage. Trade creates prosperity, distributes success and wealth, and collectively enriches all of our societies and communities. And trade and commerce are made possible by standards that smooth the way. In an unstable world, international standards define what great looks like, setting consistent benchmarks for businesses, consumers, and nations that ensure reliability, build trust, simplify choices, and make trade between countries simpler and faster, and enrich all of our lives. By distilling the wisdom of experts from around the world, standards represent the very best of human innovation and knowledge, and guide economies in adopting sustainable and ethical practices that make our world a better place. Columbia University's Professor Anu Bradford coined the term Brussels effect. She noted that the EU shapes global policies on privacy, safety, antitrust, the environment, and now artificial intelligence, not as a superpower, but as an international standards setter. And to quote the automotive legend Henry Ford, "If you think of standardization as the best that you know today, but which is to be improved tomorrow, you get somewhere." From the maritime sector to aviation to the food industry, standards really do make the world go round. And indeed, the FTAs that this community here negotiates and the foreign direct investment you help secure would not be possible without your support for international standards. Though I might note, as diplomats, you will appreciate the irony of the fact that different nations choose to celebrate World Standards Day on different days. And another irony, as diplomats, we refer to a standard common language as the lingua franca. In fact, I think we had a demonstration here from the chaplain tonight. But it turns out that the original lingua franca, that specific language, is not Latin, English, or French, or Italian, but the language of the Franks, a West German dialect spoken between the 5th and the 9th centuries, something our Franconian Lady Mayoress Elizabeth reminds me of constantly. Now, this year's mayoral theme, Connect to Prosper, celebrates the knowledge miles of our square mile, which I like to call the world's coffee house. It's about leveraging the power of the city's many connections, many here tonight, including so many connections with international partners, to take on the big challenges facing the world today. You might note that within 2 miles of where we're sitting, there are 40 learned societies, 70 higher education institutions, 130 research institutes, and 24,000 businesses, speaking more than 300 languages. Our city is arguably the world's most connected commercial center. And with 111 livery companies representing different professions, trades, and crafts, some of which trace their origins to the 8th century, we know a thing or two about maintaining trading standards. Now, all 6 of the key Connect to Prosper initiatives are underpinned and promote international standards. The 695th Lord Mayor's Ethical AI Initiative provides ethics courses for professionals. We've had more than 5,000 participants from 500 organizations across 50 countries taking this in the past 6 months. And we are bringing together next Tuesday in Brussels over 30 nations to conclude the Walbrook AI Accord promoting ISO 42000 as the way to regulate artificial intelligence. Our Space Protection Initiative is a combined technology and financial services program to use space debris removal insurance bonds to keep space clutter-free, meeting international space sustainability standards. Our Smart Economies Network Initiative seeks to deploy international open data and identity standards in business and trade using X-Road infrastructure donated 20 years ago to the world by the government of Estonia. Our Constructing Science Offices to Labs initiative has created and is promoting an international standard for converting unused commercial premises to life sciences facilities. And finally, second to last, Galanos is a multi-million-pound Oxford University-led program across 70 countries, improving standards in mental health research. And finally, as with all Lord Mayors, our green finance initiatives advocate standards for voluntary carbon markets, nature markets, carbon offtake agreements, and sovereign sustainability-linked bonds. Each of the nations represented here tonight supports the quest for strong international standards. And as part of our outreach, Policy Chairman Chris Hayward and I have already traveled to the United Arab Emirates, the US, Switzerland, Ireland, India, China, France, Italy, and Saudi Arabia since November. And we're looking forward to trips to Japan, Singapore, the Netherlands, Germany, and Brussels in the coming months. We couldn't be more appreciative of the great Connect to Prosper hospitality we have been shown. Our travels have reinforced the fact that our nations share many of the same ambitions, from realizing the full potential of new technology to combating climate change. The United Nations' 17 Sustainable Development Goals need global solutions. Global solutions need global discussions. And reflecting on the tradition of writers, artists, scientists, and traders meeting in the Square Miles coffee houses to debate issues of the day, I affectionately refer to modern-day London and the UK as the world's coffee house, a place for global discussions where all comers are welcome, new ideas are encouraged, and culture and commerce sit side by side. Coffee houses. I accept that the UK does not produce the most coffee. That's Brazil. I accept the UK doesn't consume the most coffee. That's Finland. And I accept the UK doesn't have the best coffee. That, in my humble opinion, is Italy. However, the UK is the world's coffee house, and so appropriately tonight, I have a small token, a mayoral coffee spoon complete with beans for the Foreign Secretary and the Dean. In a world of misinformation and disinformation, we are seeing what happens when standards start to slip. And I believe that working alongside all of you, the City of London has an important role to play in maintaining and creating international standards that offer stability and security, promote trade and investment, and put us a step closer to achieving our shared goals. Friends, you do an excellent job of flying the flag for your nations, and we must continue to work together to keep raising standards for the benefit of mankind. Thank you. And if I may ask you to be upstanding for a toast. To the ambassadors, high commissioners, and other representatives of foreign and Commonwealth governments. The ambassadors and high commissioners. Ambassadors and high commissioners.
Pray silence for His Excellency, the Ambassador of Honduras and Dean of the Diplomatic Corps.
Thank you. Lord Mayor, and Lady Mayors, Secretary of State, Excellencies, Alderman, Sheriff, Chief Commoner, my Lord, ladies and gentlemen. Lord Mayor, you are the 695 Lord Mayor of the city and have continued to promote commerce, investment, and overall long-lasting friendship between our people, our nation. Thank you for doing that. I think my colleague and my fellow excellencies will want to join me tonight in thanking the Lord Mayor and Lady Mayors, as well as the City London Corporation for hosting this event, and for the Foreign Secretary for his presence and the speech which we very much look forward to. Lord Mayor, you have in your blood the millenary inheritance of tradition that allowed us to foresee with wisdom the destiny of our people. It's a great privilege for us to rise to pay tribute to your exceptional service. Your background, coupled with the commitment to the common good, has been evident. This commitment to create a society where all can flourish is deeply significant, and one that I hope will continue through the city and beyond. The city, dear friend, plays a profoundly important role in the well-being of the economy, and the Lord Mayor's non-stop advocacy for the city is vital. Your dedication to the economic and social development has clearly been fruitful and deserves the utmost praise, and we all recognize your achievement. I also want to thank, on behalf of the Diplomatic Corps, the Lord Mayor Office, his wonderful team, and the Foreign Secretary for their personal and dynamic engagement with the diplomatic corps and their attention to issues which concern us all. I also want to recognize the wonderful work of your predecessor, our good friend Nicholas Lyon and his distinguished wife. Thank you for your work you do it. May I take the opportunity to express our most sincere wishes of rapid recovery of His Majesty the King Charles III and Her Royal Highness Princess Catherine. Please accept the solidarity of the whole community, diplomat community, accredited to the Court of St. James. Your Excellency, Secretary of State, your experience as Prime Minister, your leadership on a global basis generate among us much confidence, especially in your effort to find long-lasting peace in the distant conflict that currently affect our world. We, the diplomats, working for peace. We, the diplomats, pray for peace. And we thank all you do in favor of the peace. Thank you, sir. When it comes to urgent challenges that we face, whether it's climate change, whether it's trying to build a more stable global economy, we know the simple truth. No single one of us can do it alone. We need to work together. Together. We need to build cooperation. We need to strengthen cooperation. And that we, all the diplomats, we intend to do it. Every diplomatic mission, every ambassador, high commissioner present here tonight is dedicated to building a stronger tie between our countries, to helping address differences that arise, to work together on all that brings us together and all that has to bring us together if we are going to meet the challenger of our time. The willingness and ability to engage in constructive dialogue is an asset in itself. I think the recent history has made the facts clear to us. We can only master the great challenger of humanity together. In view with all global challenges, climate change, conflict, war, poverty, hunger, immigration, disease, access to education, the digital revolution, we cannot emphasize often enough to the fact that the national good in our highly interconnected world always depend on the global common good. There is so many good examples that show that trust between a state and a child, how important and necessary international cooperation. That's very important for all the diplomat, all the friends present here. Respect, tolerance, dialogue. Those are the principles of which international relations as well and human relations should be based on. That's very clear. I know all of us here share the same goal. And I want to thank and encourage everyone here tonight to keep working for a better way of life or nation. I had the opportunity to talk with all my colleagues, and I found the compromise, a strong compromise of everybody here to work for peace. We need democracy, respect for human rights, and human solidarity. Please, we need, and we spoke about the end of war. It's universal desire and ultimately imperative. We need peace. We have to work together. We have to pray together. We are developing the country together. My Lord and Mayores, once again, on behalf of the Diplomat Corps, I present our deepest gratitude for your kindness, hospitality. Secretary of State, you can count with all Diplomat Corps here. Feel free to talk with us, to share, and to working together. Thank you so much.
Pray silence for the Right Honourable Lord Cameron of Chipping Norton, Secretary of State for Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Affairs.
My Lord Mayor, Your Excellencies, Mr. Speaker, Lords, Ladies and Gentlemen, thank you. I thought my days of dressing up in white tie and speaking in halls like this were well and truly over. So I want to thank the Prime Minister Rishi Sunak for bringing me out of retirement, and for you, Lord Mayor, for asking me to come and speak here tonight. The last 6 months as Foreign Secretary have been every bit of a whirlwind as much as being Prime Minister. I think I've visited 33 countries, 1 overseas territory. I've crisscrossed 6 continents. Of course, it's not quite as exciting as when you're appointed Prime Minister. Of course, you walk through that big black door, you are clapped in by your officials, you sit down at your desk, and the Cabinet Secretary hands you the telephone, and it's the President of the United States, in my case, Barack Obama, who said, "Good evening, David. Enjoy this moment. It's all downhill from now on." But thank you for inviting me to speak this evening. Earlier today, I took a step back from my 6 months in the job and offered at greater length than you would have appreciated perhaps at the end of this wonderful meal my reflections on our dangerous and competitive world and what it means for Britain. So tonight, therefore, I wanted to just give you the highlights. And it's fitting to do this here in the heart of the City of London, because my starting point is that we cannot divorce foreign policy from economic performance. Having impact abroad relies on a strong economy and a cohesive society. And in turn, doing diplomacy and development well abroad is integral to our security and our prosperity at home. You get a sense of this down the road at Battersea Power Station, a once derelict building where I launched the 2010 election manifesto. It is now transformed. Strong ties to the rest of the world helped attract the overseas investment to transform it. And now Apple's UK headquarters sits beneath those 4 iconic chimneys and demonstrates our attractiveness today to yet more investors. The link between effective foreign policy and domestic politics is equally strong. All over the Western world and beyond, we see the rise of political movements that want to pull up the drawbridge and focus purely on domestic concerns. Now, I believe these movements are profoundly wrong, but our approach must not be to ignore them. We need instead to deal with what have caused them to grow, issues like illegal migration and the unequal benefits of globalization. That's why robust approaches to immigration and levelling up must be vital parts of any successful mainstream political party. Now, we live in a world that is more dangerous, more volatile, more confrontational than most of us have ever known. War in the heart of Europe, while conflict rages in the Middle East and in 18 countries across Africa. It is a stark contrast with my early years in politics. As the Berlin Wall came down, it felt as if a new era of democracy, of market economics, and of global cooperation was emerging. And we need to face up to this new situation and act accordingly. Returning to frontline politics, what stands out to me is how many reasons are found for us not to act. It too often feels as if the fundamental change in the world is not matched by a fundamental change in how many in the free world are thinking and acting. Across the world, too many adopt a kind of defensive crouch. Not just those I've already mentioned who want to pull up the drawbridge, but also those who think we can't act, claiming we've become too weak, or those who won't act because they're so fixated on the risks, be they of escalation, unintended consequences, legal jeopardy, or simply causing offence. Fear of making the wrong choice leads to delay, even where not acting is actually the worst choice of all. All of this, while, as the Prime Minister said in Warsaw recently, an axis of authoritarian states is increasingly acting together to undermine us, our allies, and the world order on which we all depend. My conviction is that we, with our partners, can choose to make a difference. We have agency. The question is whether we have the courage to use it, the courage to act. How then should we act? I say there are 6 points that really matter. First, security must be our top priority. Look at the picture here in just the last few months. Chinese cyber attacks on our democracy. A suspected Russian sabotage attack right here in London. Iranian assassination plots here on British soil. We cannot ignore the threat. That's why Britain has taken action to defend ourselves against espionage more effectively, to screen investment into our critical national infrastructure more carefully, and to monitor our adversaries' influencing activities in Britain more closely. And crucially, to invest 2.5% of GDP in defence and at least 5% of our defence budget in research and development. We are hardening our defences, both now and for the future. Second, we have to be bolder in standing up for what we believe in, beliefs like freedom and the rule of law, and principles that should guide the world order, like sovereignty and territorial integrity. Our adversaries are openly undermining these vital foundations for global security and prosperity. So we must be bolder in combating their distortions, publicizing intelligence, as we did before Putin's illegal invasion, exposing the malign networks that are used to spread lies, backing free media in places where Russia tries to use bullying and bribery to get their way. Our adversaries also accuse us of double standards, and I believe we should be frank in response. Yes, the suffering in Gaza is heartbreaking, but an unprovoked war against an independent country like Ukraine that poses no threat is wholly different from the conflict that has followed the brutal attacks of October the 7th. And our adversaries say that we don't invest in the global south. Nonsense. It is the UK and allies taking action to tackle poverty and improve lives around the world. Britain is, for instance, the third biggest donor to the Global Fund and has played a huge role in vaccines for killer diseases like malaria. Our blue belts around our overseas territories are the largest marine protection area our planet has ever seen, and we give 74 times more funding to the United Nations Central Emergency Relief Fund than does Russia. We are faced today with a cynical assault on principles that have helped to build a better world, and we must not let such cynicism win. Third, in my view, we need a harder edge for a tougher world. We must revisit approaches that were born of good intentions and ask if they are truly fit for purpose today. Prizing consensus, not speaking out, avoiding risks. Such attitudes perhaps seem to cost us less in a more forgiving age. But if Putin's illegal invasion teaches us anything, it must be that doing too little, too late, only spurs an aggressor on. And too often, in my view, this lesson has not been learned. Take the Red Sea. While many criticize the Houthis and talk about the need to defend the freedom of navigation, only the United States and Britain have been willing and able to strike back at them. Or take defence spending in Europe, where still some countries seem unwilling to invest. Or take women's rights, where some are so cowed by accusations of colonialism that they will not condemn practices like female genital mutilation. We need to be more assertive. We should make 2.5% a new benchmark for all NATO countries' defence spending. And let's use travel bans to stop politicians voting for FGM in the morning and then hopping on a plane to go shopping in London in the afternoon. And sometimes a harder edge means being honest with ourselves, saying, yes, we are open to talent and to refugees, but no, we will not permit criminal gangs to decide who enters our country. And yes, we are committed to net zero by 2050, the country that has done more than any other in the G7 to cut carbon emissions. But no, we are not going to demonize oil and gas playing a part in a country's energy transition, or indeed in our own. Fourth, we need a good dose of realism. I have no illusions. I'm privileged to oversee a vast diplomatic network, a significant development budget, and incredible intelligence agencies. We all in the government represent a nation with a sovereign nuclear deterrent, a permanent seat on the UN Security Council, and a web of extraordinary connections around the world. But Britain is not a country like the United States, where every decision we make changes the world. There are vital areas where our action is decisive, but often we are a state whose decisions and hopefully adept diplomacy can influence the approach of others. As I once heard a leading CEO remark, Britain is big enough to matter, but small enough to be nimble. And I think that's an apt mantra for a world in which we need coalitions in order to get things done. Take Ukraine. As we saw recently in Congress, Britain has not just offered support ourselves, we have galvanized others. And we're now maintaining our military support to Ukraine, £3 billion a year until 2030, and calling on our allies to join us in that pledge. To persuade, we also need to be active. That is why a fortnight ago I became the first Foreign Secretary to visit all 5 Central Asian states and Mongolia. And that is why I believe it should be a core part of our foreign policy and the Foreign Office's mission to champion the English language. Fifth, we must be ruthlessly practical, fixing and facing the world as it is, not as it was or as we wish it to be. And so, yes, we want the fighting to end in Gaza. I would like it to stop now and to have those hostages released. But simply calling for an immediate ceasefire does not make it more likely. It's more practical to focus on how you get that stop in the fighting, how you get that pause, so we can see the hostages released, more aid delivered, and then turn that into a permanent end to the fighting. And yes, we support reform of the multilateral institutions because we want the United Nations and other multilateral organizations to succeed. But we're also increasing our support to those nimble organizations that have an impact on the ground, like the Global Alliance for Vaccines and Immunization and the Global Fund. And yes, we've made our biggest contribution ever to the Green Climate Fund, but we're also trying to make it easier for small island states and developing states to access this funding, helping friends across the Caribbean, in the Pacific, and in the Indian Ocean, and countries like Samoa, who are hosting this year's Commonwealth Summit, to tackle climate change. I could, of course, add a personal example of being practical. Yes, I supported remaining in the European Union, but I'm now focused laser-like on ensuring that Britain and the EU have the best possible relationship, not as members, but as friends, neighbours and partners. And I'm doing all I can to also ensure that Britain invests in new partnerships, like the CPTPP, Comprehensive Trade and Pacific Partnership, a trade deal with one of the fastest growing regions of the world, the Indo-Pacific. Finally, we need to demonstrate political will and strategic patience. It's not enough merely to wish for a better world and hope for the best. We need to see things through with our allies, together. Our adversaries today know all too well our underlying strengths. The economies backing Ukraine outmatch Russia by around 25-1. We have a NATO alliance that is growing larger and stronger than ever before. We have flows of energetic people heading in our direction from right across the globe. But our adversaries think they've honed in on our greatest weakness, a lack of determination to succeed. They believe they can outlast us, endure more pain, make more sacrifices. We are in a battle of wills, and we must all prove our adversaries wrong, Britain and our allies and partners around the world. In both foreign and domestic policy, in Britain and the wider West, we are at a crossroads. If we make the right choices, if we act now, a bright future awaits. But if we hesitate, our adversaries will write our future for us. So we need to show courage, the courage to determine our own destiny, the courage to rise to this moment of extreme peril, the courage to act. Thank you. Thank you. I would like to propose a toast to the Lord Mayor and the Lady Mayoress. The Lord Mayor and Lady Mayoress.